We launched our application in Slack in January, February of last year. Our first paying customer we signed in May. Their renewal is up. We're talking about renewal right now. We expect them to renew. We did 40K in revenue last year. This year, we expect to triple that. To date, we've only raised 150K. We went through Techstars 22, 23. We're going to be raising a $2 million round so we can build the enterprise version of Trova, not just in Slack, but also in Microsoft Teams. And our goal in the 2-year period is to get to 100K in MRR.
Welcome to the Startup Journey podcast. Greg Moran, your host. Peter Dean, your other host, is with me. What's up, Peter?
This is so cool. I'm so excited to do this. And thanks, Michael, for doing it. I really just thank you. Yeah.
So here's what we're doing. We have the Founders Journey podcast, which is kind of our long form podcast. And Peter and I decided we're going to try a different format. And we're probably going to do these once a month. And we're calling them the Startup Journey. And because a lot of what we talk about on the Founders Journey podcast is really, it's exited founders. It's people who have gone through, a lot of the journey themselves and really sharing experiences. But what we wanted to do was actually have a show that features startups going through it in real time and to tell their stories. And we're going to start this out by having a company pitch. And Peter and I are going to play the roles of investors. That's what we are, investors. So we will, not necessarily in every company on here, but maybe we become an investor in a lot of these companies. So we're gonna kind of present. We're gonna actually ask the founder to present as they would be to a VC, and we're gonna ask questions. And over time, we're gonna invite some of these companies back to keep joining us on a quarterly basis and keep updating, so you can keep following that journey with us. So we're calling this podcast the Startup Journey. This is our first episode. Super exciting, and we have our first guinea pig / guest who found out this new format an hour ago. I think Mike Fodera is our guest today. Mike is the founder of a startup called Trova. Thanks, Mike, for jumping on with us.
Peter, Greg, thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity. Really excited to share what we're doing at Trova. I always like to start these conversations off with actually why I'm here. Prior to Trova, I worked at Dell, I worked at HP, companies with thousands and thousands of employees. But I was working remotely, and I was doing that even before COVID. And you may not know this yet, but I'm a pretty extroverted guy. I have no problem walking up to a stranger, introducing myself. But walking up to somebody and saying, hey, do you want to be best friends, doesn't always relate to actually a long-lasting relationship. So I had moved for a job at Dell, and I found myself in Virginia. And I only worked with one other Dell employee. And I was like, where is everybody else? Why am I not hungover on Saturday morning? Because I haven't done anything fun in a few months. And I just felt like really isolated in that role. Like, where is everybody else? How do I start a conversation? And I found it so challenging that I decided, you know what, maybe there's a better way to meet people at work and do so in a way that's more meaningful, as well as that could be beneficial for an employee to kind of pick up new skills, just like you would have in a traditional office setting, where just because you don't work with someone doesn't mean they have nothing to share or teach you. And that's both work and outside of work.
Wait, first, I have to validate. I met Mike through this. He sent me a message because I was using his technology at this Slack group that we're in, which 40,000 people in the Slack group. And he sent a direct message and said, hey, why don't you do this? And so he has no problem walking up and talking to people right away.
All right. So Mike, tell us what Trova does. 30-second elevator pitch. What do you do?
So right now, Trova is building higher performing teams by creating more opportunities for employees to connect and engage outside of their core team. We're doing that today inside of Slack. The future is Teams. And the platform itself helps people start organic conversations based off of shared interests that they have or skills they want to pick up. Basically, we're building that office, that human connection to the remote world in hopes that every employee, regardless of team tenure or work location, can find the people and resources they need at any company.
So why can't you do that I mean, you can do that with Slack, right?
Slack is a great platform for chatting with the people that you know, but you can't just go up to someone you've never spoken to or don't know anything about and be like, hey, how do I become a better public speaker? So you need a little bit more information that Slack doesn't provide. And that's why we integrate with Slack to get closer to the customer, but to provide that valuable data that they're missing. And that's that who we are and what value we could bring to the organization.
Got it. So when you say, like, what kind of data are you then bringing in?
We are a profile-driven employee engagement and skill development platform. So when you jump on Trova, and Peter, thanks for being one of our early users. You build a profile that's unique to you. What are your interests, your hobbies, your skills that you have, location, college attended? All that goes into a profile. So if you're Slack users today and if you ever clicked on someone's head, the most you're going to get out of Slack is maybe an email, and at most, like maybe someone's added their team or title. What we want to do is showcase a little bit more about everybody in the organization and not just have it like sit like a Facebook profile or a LinkedIn profile where you have to go kind of creep on it. We build a directory for the modern workforce. So now that we have all this interesting, compelling data about the employees, you can search the employee directory for a skill, filter by location. You want to go hiking next weekend? See if any of your coworkers at Dell are geographically close and have that skill. You have a presentation coming up next week, search public speaking and see if anybody at your company can be a mentor for it. Those are the things that we're bringing to the table, and we're doing it right inside of Slack.
So I was going to actually ask you, this is kind of like LinkedIn meets Slack, but it's more dynamic than that. It sounds like.
The joke is we're Bumble for friends for the enterprise. So, we want to make workplaces more inclusive. Companies are struggling with innovation. They're struggling with employee burnout, employee performance. And all that comes down to, if I'm working in a silo, how am I going to add to the company? How am I going to innovate? It's just not possible when your community at work has shrunk to just the 3 or 4 people that you work with. So what we're going to help you do is build those meaningful relationships outside of your core team. So next time you go for, let's say, a promotion, people know who you are. You've got a social brand. You've been able to pick up skills from your coworkers, so you've improved as an employee. And on the personal side, you've hopefully built some lasting relationships that you can rely on for work, of course, but also in just the social setting.
Yeah. So just an example of how it would work. I had an experience with it. And so my experience was, because of my background, I had people reach out to me and ask me just to meet. And I did. And I met some potential people I can work with going forward. But give us an example of what good outcome would be with an individual using it.
We have so many of these stories, and I love to share them. One of our partner companies here in the greater Boston area reported that an employee had met someone that had this very unique game that they played, and our platform is smart enough to match those 2 employees together. And they sent a message to HR, joking, of course, like, just to let you know, because of Trova, like, I'm going to be offline for a bit, this weekend, because I met, Bill, he shared the same game, and he and I are just like going bananas together playing that. And like, we have countless stories where people are meeting folks that they never would have without our platform. In one company, for example, there's 1,000 employees, and we've had visibility that because of our platform, over 10,000 unique messages have been sent across users that we've initiated. So really high engagement, starting some really compelling conversations for folks.
How do you determine the ROI? Like, how does it come? Well, first of all, before you actually answer that, what's the business model? Is it you selling to companies? Like a
traditional B2B SaaS enterprise sales. ICP would be a company 500 employees or more. We love hybrid, traditional tech, office worker. We like hybrid because it gives you a place to go meet those folks in person, which is really nice. We would sell into a chief people officer and down, so head of employee experience, engagement. We are doing more on the mentorship and shadow program side, so a little bit of L&D as well. But ultimately, the chief people officers that make the final decision on our platform.
Enterprise license based on the size of the company?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly right.
So how do you determine then ROI? Like, how does a company know if this is paying for itself? Is this like a retention play or?
Yeah. So we used to pitch retention. There are a lot of kind of soft ROI data points that we kind of touch on. But ultimately, it comes down to the data that we're providing back to the organization, and we are collecting a lot of it. So we can tell that we are creating a more engaged workforce. We are also doing things like showing, hey, how many mentors have Trova identified in our organization, where employees are now being able to showcase the skills that they have, and the org can actually take advantage of those employee skills and making that more prevalent in the organization and helping, again, organically upskill the workforce. So high performing teams, there's of course a bit of retention, but it all comes down to, are people using it and enjoying using it and feeling like, hey, you know what? I find my sense of belonging here, and I'm going to stick around for a bit.
Do you find that data? Are you finding employees that maybe aren't engaged with this versus ones that are? Is that part of it or not?
100%. And what's really cool about our data is it's not just specific to actual usage in our app. Because we're in Slack, there's some really cool technology that we're leaning on to identify, conversational data to get heuristic information about, hey, are employees happy or not here? And what are the trending conversations? Who are the power users? So you don't necessarily have to be a Trova user for the company to find value in the services that we provide. We know that we're not going to get 100% of the workforce to sign up, but we're targeting at least 50% or higher. So the folks that want or are looking for mentorship, camaraderie, have an opportunity to do so.
Is it optional when a company licenses this technology? Is it optional for an employee? I mean, assume employees can either opt in or opt out.
Employees can opt in or opt out to most things. Like the profile is completely optional. We always say share what you're comfortable with. So it's 100% optional, but there are things where employees might get roped into one of the values that we provide, whether that's like an executive lottery where we introduce an employee to the CEO as an example, or an employee shout out. So there are some things that employees can't opt out of, but for some of that social mentoring things, if they don't want to use the platform, they don't have to.
So I assume then a big metric to determine whether this is working inside of a company, because obviously this is a SaaS model. So, net retention, gross retention is going to be a huge issue. So adoption within that employee base is going to be huge to determine whether or not you're going to be able to renew the contract with the customer. Do you have data so far that says employees are opting into this in a big way, or are you tracking
Yeah, we
that?
are. And I think the data that we have today is compelling, even compared to some of the bigger competitors that we're competing against, who are showing metrics of like 25 to 30% engagement. And that's almost what a lot of HR tech kind of platforms similar to a Trova would see. We're upwards of 50 and 60% across our customer base. We had one company launch last month, 700 person company, 200 people signed up to be part of the early adopter group. So we're scratching a need that's out there. I don't know if you saw the Wall Street Journal article this week. Loneliness is an epidemic at this point.
I saw this. Yeah. The other day.
We're solving a true need, not just for the employee, but the employer. Employees have been looking for more ways to engage. No one wants to be told to have fun but we provide that outlet that they can lean on when they're ready. And that makes us feel like adults. And we could, if I want to go get a drink with somebody, I could do that. And I could do that on my own terms versus showing up at a company-wide happy hour and then having to play that who's who and who do I know, et cetera.
So this is really kind of a remote work play, right? Like, is that accurate? I mean, that's really what you're playing into here. You've got employees everywhere. That's what that article was about too. You've got employees everywhere, right? Yeah. Is that the way you're thinking about it?
So call it the distributed workforce. I think very few companies will go back to in-person 100% of the time. Even if they do, a large enough company is going to have multiple floors, multiple departments. You'll never be able to build a relationship across an organization. What we want to do is help you find the people and resources you need on your terms. And we do that in a way that's fun and easy. And, maybe Peter can even attest to it. Like, it's super easy to find folks in using our directory. I mean, it's just feels completely natural.
Peter, you weren't using this for your company. You were actually
No, I used it for this platform called Rev Genius, and I was a new person that came in, and I didn't follow the rules as I normally don't. I jumped right in. I got this email that told me what to do, but I didn't read that. I just went in and tried to do stuff. So I saw all these like intros. So I did an intro like theirs. It was such a pain in the ass to build. And I'm like, why is everyone doing these intros like this in Slack?
This is actually a Slack community that you're in.
Yeah. And so then I went back. I went back and then found it and then started. I'm like, oh, I should have done this at first because it would have been way easier. And I just filled out my form and put what I wanted in there. And again, I was a little more guarded in this because I'm like more of a senior person. And, I just don't want to be sold by 50 reps, but that's what I was nervous about. Like, I'm just going to get called by other reps. But that totally didn't happen. The opposite happened. They're like, oh, I see that you do SaaS and you're B2B ABM. I'd love to talk to you about it. I'm working on this. I had literally had 4 meetings the next week from this community. One was someone that we could collaborate with to do product market fit stuff. Another great person just met out of Chicago, and he reached out based on what we're doing. Said, we do similar markets. I don't do what you do. I don't think you do what I do. Let's talk. And I had a meeting. And then this kind of earlier marketing person reached out to me, and she said, I see you've done this before. Can you give me some pointers? I'm like, sure. You know me. I'll do that for anyone.
So the use case goes beyond the company. I mean, the use case for your business. I mean, that's just a whole other use case that you can actually deploy, right?
Yeah.
What's that? Like associations, communities, things like that.
When we talk about scalability, it's not just a traditional B2B play, and like a community like Rev Genius. We're not going to charge. They don't have the same problems that a traditional organization has. With that said, without much change on our side, we're able to spin up a traditional community like Rev Genius to be a kind of like a channel player for us where, hey, we're exposing our platform to all of these people in hopes that they then bring it to their organization.
So that's part of your go-to-market strategy is to get these associations and communities to start using this.
And this is a community of like 45,000. Am I right? You would know the number. It's like about 45,000. I was telling you about this separately for go-to-market RevOps, B2B kind of tech sales, tech marketing. It's a whole group of people, super active.
So why isn't like why can't Slack or somebody else why wouldn't they just build this functionality into what they're doing to build out a more elaborate profile?
Yeah, so it's not just the profile that we're doing, and the profile is a big component of it. But our goal is not just to be a Slack plugin like that. To me, it's almost like an MVP. This is where we're starting, right? This is the starting point. Right now, we're identifying what are the features that we're providing that are of most value, and where are we going next. So we've been kind of getting pushed by our partner customers to say, hey, we want to do a little more L&D here. So, for example, and I don't want to go off topic. I'm hopefully answering your question, but on the L&D side, I think what's really interesting is that most in the
L&D, but just for people listening, L&D, learning and development is what you're talking about, right? Okay.
Most people I think of a person as like an iceberg. You're going to do the top of the iceberg for your job, right? Well, you've got all these different skills that no one's asking you about. They're untapped. They're sitting idle because it's not part of your day-to-day operation. But if you can bring those skills to work, and maybe you're excellent at those skills, and you could say, hey, I'm happy to be a mentor in X, Y, or Z. You build a mentor network within an organization that could be extremely powerful as people look to pick up new skills, learn about new roles that no one else is doing in the market. We're a leader in ad hoc or this on-demand learning right now, where I'm able to pick up new skills like that. Just again, going back to our directory. And that for the employee, they're getting a better sense of belonging. Hey, I'm actually providing value here because I'm supporting other folks. So it's a two-way street. If a Slack's going to come in here, Slack is a communications platform. They are building a directory, but their focus is not on how do we make companies higher performing, or, like they're not going to have the same mission that we are, where they're going to execute in the same way. And our competitive advantage will be continuing to lean into kind of our thesis, which is how do we start compelling conversations, whether that's social or learning, and continue to innovate in that direction. And we're not tied to Slack, right? So Slack is the MVP, we'll be in Teams tomorrow. And we've got goals to eventually move this off to our own platform for cross-community conversation, cross-organization, cross-company.
So what's the underlying kind of fundamental problem? If I'm one of your prospects, right? So I'm a chief people officer at a, enterprise company. What exactly is the problem you're solving for me? If you're trying to explain it to me as a buyer.
Simple as I can explain it. Employers want to hire the best talent anywhere in the world. Employees want to work wherever they want to work. But employers don't want to sacrifice performance and innovation for a remote employee. And employees don't want to come into the office just because employers think that's the only way that will be innovative. So we're giving companies the ability to attract and retain the best talent by giving them the tools and resources they need to connect, engage, collaborate across team and department, regardless of where they work. So higher performing teams wherever they're based out of.
So if you put a label on this, right, is it a collaboration tool? Is it a culture tool?
It's a collaboration platform. So collaboration starts through social, or it starts through mentorship. At the end of the day, like, we're going to be building a network for employees within the company, which will help them grow their skills, growth in the company, and all of that ties back to, increase in performance and innovation.
Yep.
And feeling more engaged. Like, then you feel
higher performing. Like, if you need help with something, you don't have to go to your boss and ask them to go track down something. You use our platform, you search for it, you find folks that could help you out, you build a relationship. I mean, we're being treated like kids at work, where we've got HR has turned into a party planner, back to work enforcer, and mentor matchmaker. 3 jobs they hate. Our platform takes care of all of that by treating adults like adults.
Got it. Real quick, Mike, before we wrap up, what's been the traction to date? And you're raising now, right? Talk about your fundraise and what's been the traction.
So we launched our application in Slack in January, February of last year. Our first paying customer we signed in May. Their renewal is up. We're talking about renewal right now. We expect them to renew. We did $40K in revenue last year. This year we expect to triple that. To date, we've only raised $150K. We went through Techstars 22, 23. We're going to be raising a $2 million round so we can build the enterprise version of Trova, not just in Slack, but also in Microsoft Teams. And our goal in the 2-year period is to get to 100K in MRR.
Got it. 100K in MRR. And right now you're at, would be a couple thousand.
Yeah. So we'll hopefully finish the year, around 15K in MRR.
Cool. I mean, it's an interesting story, right? It's a big problem space, I think, and that companies are still trying to figure out. There's going to be a lot of different solutions coming in, right? You see a lot of different companies. We see a lot of different companies trying to play with this from different angles. So it'll be interesting to see how, when it starts to shake out a little bit. I think there's a lot of like niche solutions that are coming in, that are coming to market in some various form. It's going to be interesting to see how companies start to settle on these collaboration. I think the biggest issue that you're going to face when you're raising, and I think it's something that you can get over, is just, is really trying to think about this as like, why is this not a piece of simple functionality that somebody can just replicate inside Slack or something like that, right? And being able to explain it like that. And I think you can. I just think that's something that you're probably going to hear a lot.
Definitely some homework for me to take home. What we've seen as the number one thing that companies are trying to do to solve this problem is force people back to work. My favorite quote that I saw was the CEO of Zoom said they can't be as innovative on Zoom. So they're bringing people back to the office. And if that company's doing it, that means everybody else is. And that's not the answer, forcing people back into the office. That's a great way to get a voluntary riff going. So I think we're a much better solution than that.
I would agree with you. we have been able to get better talent because they were forced back. And so we got some people that wanted to be remote.
Right.
And it's a huge value prop for them. And so that's really why that was the cornerstone of why they wanted to work for us, because they could get that. And so we leveraged that to hire.
Right. Just for the record, you didn't force them back. They were being forced back by another company. And then you were able to recruit them as a result of that.
We got in and recruited them because of that. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I don't know if I said that right.
Yeah, no, we got it. That's what I wanted to clarify that. That you weren't. But that's going to be the thing, right? It's going to be separating yourself from like the really niche solutions and really showing that, hey, this is beyond a piece of functionality.
Yeah.
That there's a real business. There's a real business to be built here. On the enterprise side, and we didn't spend any time on this really, but curious on it. On the enterprise side, is it direct? Are you selling direct to these companies? Is that the way you anticipate the go-to-market?
Yeah. So I touched on it a little bit earlier. We see a huge opportunity in these communities like the Rev Geniuses of the world to be our channel partner and get our message out. We're a 3-person team and we're not even all full-time. I mean, I'm full-time. So we're a really scrappy team right now, sending out a lot of cold emails, working our network for warm leads. But right now, I think the number one thing that we're doing that's actually starting to actually really pick up is that channel play where people are getting exposed to our platform, seeing the value, and then bringing it to their organization. So I just got pinged today from that exact use case. We've picked up 3 companies from Rev Genius already. So that's really, and there's so many more of those Rev Geniuses of the world where we could plug in our platform for almost, no expense to us, where we could just continue to do that. And also even charge a different type of fee for that. So that's not just a no revenue play. There's some revenue to be made there as well.
Because there are, behind most of those plays, there's the paid group out of it that they're cultivating. Yeah. And there's value to them in having that paid group.
Yep. So I think, in terms of a presentation, right, I just think about like, how do you separate yourself from the functionality? How do you show this is not a piece of simple functionality, but that there's a really long-term play here? And I would really think about the ROI side, because there's a lot of nice to have stuff that's floating around in the HR tech market. And how do you separate yourself from that to say like, no, this is actually something, if you're going to have a remote workforce or even a hybrid workforce, this is something you really need to be thinking about, right? Or just a larger workforce, and that's the other question that I would think about, having a ready answer to is, okay, let's say that everything reverts. Let's say that remote work ends and everybody goes back to the office. Does that kill your business? Sounds like no.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think it will. I mean, we definitely have like I mentioned before, if you're part of a large organization, there's no way for you to have a meaningful conversation with everybody. You're always going to be silent on team, department, work floor, work corner, etc. Our platform is just going to be there for you to make sure you meet those folks that
to cross-pollinate,
more likely to have a conversation, a compelling conversation with.
And so, just from a traction standpoint, again, you want to end the year around 150, you said, in revenue. So about, call it 10K in MRR. Is that right?
Yeah. So exactly. If we're doing 150 by December, a little over 12K in MRR at that point. We're at 60K to date. So well on our way for the year. And that's
what do you think you do in 25?
With investment, we should be doing 50K in MRR by the end of that year, or maybe it's 35 or 40K in MRR by the end of that year. So we should triple
about $500,000
each year.
How many customers just quit? Like, could you get one customer and like hit your number, or is it like how many customers do we need?
The average.
Because if you get a big one, like a FedEx or someone like that, like what does that do to you?
Right now, we are in the 500 to 3,000 employee range. We haven't knocked down the IBMs of the world, which I think is Slack's biggest customer. If anybody from IBM's listening, download Trova. So average deal size is anywhere from 1,000-person companies doing 36K a year. So it won't take too many of those to get to our number.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
This is cool, Mike. Really appreciate it and appreciate you joining us. I think it's an interesting story. How somebody wants more information about what Trova's doing, or if they want to talk to you about potential investment or something like that, what's the best way to reach you?
Mike at Trova.io. I'm on LinkedIn. Our website is Trova.io. And if you go to the Slack app store in Slack, you just search Trova and we'll pop right up.
Love it. Well, this is great, Mike. Really appreciate you joining us on our first episode of the new sort of or of this new format show that we're doing here on the startup journey. So look forward to following the story and reach out to Mike if you've got interest in talking to him either on a customer side or potential investor side. Reach out to him but this is really fun. It's something that the problems are there, right? And we deal with, Evergreen Mountain, my fund invest solely around future work. And this is one of those areas that we focus on heavily. So great having you. I appreciate everybody joining us for this first edition of the Startup Journey podcast. We'll still be doing the Founders Journey podcast. Those get released every Monday. We're doing one of these a month for a little while as we test out the format. Love your feedback. Share it, subscribe, like it. Leave a comment for either Mike with a question about his business or leave a comment about this format and tell us what we could be doing better, because I'm sure there's a lot of it. Peter, you look like you're dying to say something.
Well, you already said it. I was just making sure. Ask Mike questions. That's part of this deal. Like, engage with them, try it out, take a demo, find out more about it. And if you're an investor, give them a call.
I would say for anybody that's on the fence of starting their own company, there are things in life that are scary and things in life that are dangerous. And starting your own company, and I stole this from the founder of Boston Beer Company, but
Jim Cook, right?
It's scary, but it's not dangerous. I mean, the worst thing that happens to me is I go do the job I was doing before, and I love that job. And that's the worst case scenario. So if you're thinking about an idea, I say just go start talking to people, getting feedback and doing it. And the other shout out I want to make is there is, I think, a little bit lost as far as you're not just a founder that affects your life, but it affects also your spouses. So make sure they're on board. They're going to be the rock in your journey. So yeah,
that's awesome. Are you married?
Yeah.
All right.
You can talk to our wives anytime and they'll tell you exactly what it's like.
Peter and I keep talking about doing an episode with our wives, and then we think better of
this is not a good idea.
Yeah. No, it's a great way to end, Mike. Awesome to have you on. Look forward to following the story, and we'll see you next time on both the Founders Journey podcast every Monday and the Startup Journey podcast here once a month. Leave a comment, share, like, subscribe, do whatever you're doing on whatever platform, and we'd love to hear your feedback. We'll see you next time.